Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well. So I've been working on a bunch of journals, some Reader's Digest. I'll give you a sneak peek. Um, I've got 14 covers. They're all sort of botanical kind of themed, and I've decided to make them slightly skinnier than what they originally were. So anyway, so working on these, got some covers started, and I'm doing just a little bit of watercolor on the spines. And each one of them is going to go in a box. And very much like the boxes that my last sort of project was a whole bunch of little like sketchbooks, like little notebooks that were in a box very much like this. So I thought it would be fun to make a journal in a box that all goes together and, yeah. So anyway, and these are going to be really fun to make. So I'm going to stitch them like a real book. Just saying. Anyway, but I had told you guys that I would show you how to make these little boxes, and they're really fun because you can make them whatever size you want. Your only limitation is the size of the paper that you happen to have on hand, but you could totally use any kind of paper. I do recommend some kind of a stiffer paper for the box itself. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but um, like a some kind of cardstock. This is a um Paper Studio. It's like a textured cardstock. It's a little bit thin, but it's gonna work. So I thought it would be fun for me to make. I need a box to keep my pencil sharpeners in that has a cover, like a lid. And I wanted to. I mean, everybody needs boxes. You need boxes for all kinds of things, right? Like I've got this little tray here from this is like a prototype box from making these. Um, and I've just been keeping my little, you know, tools that I'm using for this project in this little tray. So I thought, gosh, I could make these for all kinds of things in my craft room, pencil boxes and, whatever. Anyway, so first thing you need to do is decide what size you want your box to be. Um, so I decided for the pencil sharpeners, um, I wanted it to be a little bit longer. Like I like this little square one, but um I thought it would be better to make it slightly longer and a little bit shorter. So, but it's about 2 inches tall, and that works really well because all these pencil sharpeners, like their tallest height is about 2 inches. So this is kind of the tallest one in the whole bunch, and it's about 1 and 3/4 inches tall. So that way I'm not constantly fighting with them to be able to get the lid to close. As long as I have them all sort of laying flat or laying, side by side, I should be able to close the box if I make the box 2 inches tall. Okay, so I've decided that I want my box to be 4 inches in depth, 6 inches in length, and 2 inches in height. So this is the size that I want my box to be, 4 by 6. So each side is in 2 inches. So since we need to figure out how we're going to turn this piece of paper into a box, we need to take into account the height of the box also on both sides, all four sides. So for the 6 inch side, we know that we want 2 inches for this end and 2 inches for this end, right? So that means we've got to add 2 inches onto the length. So that means we need at least 10 inches, right? Now, when I make these boxes, I make I make it so that there's another little part that folds in after you kind of glue it together. There's another little flap that sort of folds in. And usually I've been making that about a half an inch. So that means that I need another inch, another half inch on each side to make that little half inch part that folds in. And it just makes the box a little bit stronger. So that means that I need the length of my paper to be 11 inches. And then for the depth of the box, it's 4 inches is the depth. So again, I need that 2 inches in the front and 2 inches in the back. So that makes it 8 inches plus that half inch for the flap on the front and the back of the box. So the front and the back of the box. So that means that I need my paper cut to 9 by 11. Okay, and you'll see. So I just wanted you to kind of get a picture in your head of how to determine, like, if you only have paper that's, 8.5 inches or whatever, you need to adjust the size of your box if that's the biggest size that you have. Um, it's just easier to think about it that way. If you only have like 8.5 by 11 cardstock, then you would need to shrink your box slightly, make it maybe 3.5 inches or 5.5 inches in width or whatever. So anyway, but I have 12 by 12, so I think 9 by 11 is going to work. So let's go ahead and cut that. I could have had this all kind of pre-cut, I suppose, but I thought it would be fun to just kind of do this real time. So 9 by 11. Okay. So then we're going to need, um, I guess I should tell you the rest of the supplies you're going to need. So you'll need some cardstock. You're going to need some chipboard, which can be, a cereal box, cracker box, cake mix box, or you can buy some book board, which this is kind of weird and wonky chipboard, but um this is I think this is 70 point chipboard. It might be 50 though. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's not super thick. It's kind of medium thickness. This is this right here is 90 point, and it's probably twice as thick, at least twice as thick. See? So I think this is 50 point. Anyway, and then I have some 30 point chipboard also that I'm using in these boxes for the journals, and I might as well just go ahead and use that for these. I have these in black just because I think aesthetically it kind of goes with just about anything. This is basically like a really thick cardstock. But this is like I think this is a 30 point uh, book board. Anyway, so some chipboard, some real heavy chipboard, or some medium weight chipboard, some real lightweight chipboard, or heavy cardstock. Heavier than your, you want it to be heavier than your than your regular cardstock, like scrapbook paper. So just put it that way. Okay. So then we're gonna need our scoreboard. And so we're gonna make two scores on each side. They're going to be the same on all four sides. So we're going to score at, it doesn't matter which side you start at because each side is the same. So we're going to score at a half inch. Oh, I don't like this paper for scoring. That texture kind of grabs onto the bone folder. You just need either a bone folder or some kind of, I like to use these guys sometimes when I'm scoring, but you have to be a little bit careful with them. Anyway, so you score at 1.5 inch and then at 1.5. No, 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 no. At 2 inches. No, sorry. 2.5 inches. Because we have a 2 inch side and a 1/2 inch little flap. So a 1/2 inch and 2.5 inches. Sorry. I had the other boxes that I just made a bunch of still in my head. So a 1/2 inch plus 2 inches. So at 2.5. Turn again. 1/2 inch, 2.5. 1/2 inch and 2.5. Okay. So right here, this is our box. This is the bottom of our box. Okay. Now we need to cut this and um, cut our corners so that we can fold this up and make it into a box. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually cut, I'm going to do this on the back. So on each end, on the short ends, we're going to cut and leave attached a little triangle. Okay, so that's staying. Everything else is going to get cut off, including all of this is going to get cut off. Okay, this is going to stay. This is all getting cut off. Okay, so what we're going to have left is this shape plus this little tab at the end. And that's on both ends. Okay, this is all staying. Okay, the two sides, the two longer sides, this is all staying. The zero represents staying. Okay, and so then on the other end, we're going to have these little triangles that are also going to stay. The rest of this is going to get cut off. Okay, so you're gonna cut both and if you're working on a square box, then it doesn't matter if it's the long end or the short end, but you need to leave that little triangular piece on two opposite ends. Okay, so I'm gonna cut that. I'm gonna cut up to there. That's gonna get cut. And then that gets cut off. Okay. The only other thing I would say to keep in mind is, well, I'll show you this in a second. I'll show you in a second what I was going to tell you. Just a minute. On each of the little 1/2 inch tabs that we're leaving, you want to make just a little tiny little kind of angled cut on the end of each one of those little tabs. And that's just going to make it easier to fold them down flush when it comes time to fold this and assemble the box. You really only need to do it on the two ends, but I started just doing it all the way around on all four tabs because I just think it makes things a little bit smoother in the corners. Okay, so then you wind up with a piece of paper that looks like that. I'm going to turn this over. Well, I've got that writing on both sides, so I'll go ahead and make this the inside of the box. So then you just want to kind of gently, I'm going to go ahead and cut those little sort of angle. I mean, it's just the tiniest little sliver I'm cutting off of that corner. Go ahead and cut that off on the long ends also. Man, it's been forever since I've done any kind of tutorial whatsoever. But anyway, this is fun. This will be fun because I really do need a box for my pencil sharpeners. Okay, so now I'm just gonna fold these in. Let me get a different bone folder. Here we go. So you kind of want to crease these relatively firm. Because you won't really have another opportunity to run the bone folder. I mean, I guess you kind of will later on, but just want to get a nice crease on those. Okay, and then we're just gonna do the same thing on the short ends. And then I'm gonna fold these in, these little triangle pieces. And you just want to make sure that these little triangles, that this will fold over those. Okay, and because ultimately these are going to be folding over those triangles, but you want to make sure that they'll fold over, um and if you need to trim a little bit off of the top of those, you can, because these are just the little tabs basically that are going to be holding the box together. Okay, so then I go ahead and I just glue these tabs down right now. The ones on the two sides that have the triangles still attached, I go ahead and glue those down now. But you don't want to do that on all four, only on the two that have the triangles. Don't glue the triangles in, only glue the tab down. Sorry, getting the gunk off the end of my glue. Okay, so we're just gluing these little tabs down. Okay. Now we want to open those up. We don't want these tabs to be in our way. And we're just going to apply glue on the back side of this triangle tab. I'm using art glitter glue. Just makes life easier. And then we want to line up the corner and glue down that tab. Use your bone folder to get in there and really crease it down, or really, flatten it down really strong. Okay, and then we're going to do that all the way around the rest of the box. It gets a little cramped when you get to the last triangle, but and since that glue dries clear, I'm not too worried about, little bits of glue showing on the inside. And plus the edges are going to get covered up on the inside anyway. Okay. Last one. Okay, now we can glue. Yeah, see, that one is sticking up just a little bit. So I didn't get it perfectly flush. But it's still going to work. See, my triangle was just a little bit too high right there. And really what that means is that I didn't glue it perfectly straight. But and this is why I like to trim off that little edge on these tabs, because you have to take into account the thickness of the paper when you fold these little tabs in the corners of the box. So it really is good to just go ahead and trim that little sliver off. Okay, that is. All right. So there's our little box. And you can see it's kind of flimsy. Like it's not super sturdy. Like um I wouldn't really count on that holding up super well. So here's where I use that really thin book board or really thick cardstock, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so I want to cut these I'm going to cut 4 panels, and these little panels are going to get glued on the inside of the box on each side. Okay, so we need to cut 4 panels. Now, I haven't measured the thickness of this paper, but I want to make sure that it fits in there, you know, pretty well. It doesn't have to be like exactly to the, tenth of a millimeter up to the corners, but we do want it to be, nice. Um, so what we need to start out with is the height of our box is 2 inches. So I just want to make these strips slightly shorter than that. I don't want it to be taller than that. I don't want these sticking up over the edge of my box. So, you want to maybe take a ruler, go around and measure, you know, I would say on these, I want to make them maybe 1 7/8, something like that. So I'm going to cut some strips to that height. Actually, I'm going to go like just ever so shy of 2 inches. I'm sure I could probably find more efficient ways of cutting this, but This is how I'm doing it. Just for today. I do try to get the most, like, the most that I can out of my paper, but oops, that one's way too short. Oh well, I think I might have enough here. Okay, and then three and so now I'm cutting my sides. Just shy of 4 inches. Okay, and then the long pieces just shy of 6 inches. Yeah, 2 strips would have been enough. Okay. These won't get thrown away. Okay. And then we're just going to glue these in to the inside of the box. Don't need a lot of glue. Just if you're using art glitter glue, then it's pretty strong and it grabs pretty quick. Let me check this. Okay. It's good to check it and make sure it's not too tall before you glue it in. That other one was ever so slightly taller than I wanted it to be, but I'm not selling these, so I'm not super extremely worried about this one. And this is making this box a lot more rigid. It's really making it stronger. And I'm just, I like to make them this way because, I mean, you can totally make boxes out of chipboard. There's lots and lots of, videos of how to make paper boxes, and there's all kinds of templates on Etsy and stuff like that. And I actually have bought some of them, but this is a good way to, I've figured out that this is a good way to make a little cigar box, basically, any size that you want. And, in whatever dimensions you want it to be. So that really stiffens up this little box. And I mean, you could go crazy and like, cut little 1 inch strips and score them down the center and then like, glue them in to the inside corners or even on the outside corners or whatever. Sometimes I like to take a little, one of these little photo corners. I'll take these sometimes and, um, oh, and on the bottom, and I'll glue them in on the corners, just on the bottom, because I think they look nice, but, you know, whatever kind of, whatever kind of reinforcement you feel like you want to put on here, but this is pretty strong. So anyway, so there's the box. And then we need to make the cover. These haven't been glued in yet. So we're just going to make a piece like this that has a bottom, a back, a top, and a flap on the front. Now you could do this so that you could make your box so that it closes like that. So you have like a flap here, and then so you basically have like, you know, two flaps, and then, like tie it together somehow. I was actually thinking about putting these together like this for these journals. So you could do it that way. And either way you decide to do it, um, you make this cover the same way. Or you can do it this way, where it closes down like that. So you could do it that way or that way. And if I do it this way for the journals, I think I might use a little hitch post for the top, and an elastic or something. I don't know. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet with those, but better leave that out just in case I need to show you guys anything else. Okay, so now we need to cut our chipboard for the cover. Um, so here's my little mock-up of the cover. So we've got two strips at 6 by 2 inches and two strips at 6 by 4 inches. Okay, so we know everything is getting cut to 6 inches wide. Actually, I want to make it 6 1/4 inches wide because I want my cover to be slightly larger than the base of my box. So 6 1/4. So see, I want the bottom to be see, just slightly wider than the box. Just a little bit. If you don't want to do that, then make it exactly the same, length of your box. Excuse me. And then we need 4 inches, two at 4 inches. I'm gonna have to cut another one. And two at 2 inches. Let's see. Is this gonna work? Okay. Oh, 6 1/4. Two. Okay. And then the only other thing that sometimes can be difficult to come across is the wrapper. Like, that's the only thing I can think of to call it. We need some kind of paper, or you could use two different pieces of paper. Like, it doesn't have to be a solid piece of paper, but you need some kind of paper that you can glue all of these down to and then wrap it around. I would say at least a 1/2 inch on each side. Okay. So I've been using, as you can see on these, I've been using ledger paper. Okay. Um, because I have a, a stash of ledger paper, and plus these are, items that I'm making to sell. But, I don't necessarily want to use ledger paper for my box for my pencil sharpeners. So I'm just going to use a piece of relatively thin um, craft paper. And this is just like, what do you call it? Uh, It's what I usually wrap journals in when I sell them and I'm packaging them to customers. So I'm gonna square it a little bit harder. So you could use any kind of paper though. That's what I'm trying to say. You could use wrapping paper, like, gift wrap paper, or, you could even use scrapbook paper. If your box that you're making doesn't need to be bigger than your scrapbook paper that you have on hand, then, that's great. But if I measure all of these together, I wind up needing a piece of paper that's about 14 by 8 inches minimum. So, you could, I guess, you know, glue a couple pieces of paper together or something like that to get to your 14-inch uh, requirement, or however big your box happens to be. I need a sip of my coffee. Okay, so we're going to glue these down. I'm just going to use a glue stick. Um, because it's relatively inexpensive and it's a dry-ish glue. It's not like a super wet glue. This paper that I'm gluing onto, it can't really take a lot of glue or a lot of water. So I try to use like the least wet glue as I can when I use this glue. Okay, so I'm just eyeballing this when I'm gluing them down. They don't have to be, aligned perfect. But I do want to make sure I have at least a half-inch gap on the top there. Okay, now when I put the next one on, I want to give it, I would say, at least an eighth of an inch little gap. Okay, you need to have this gap so that this can fold like that. And also it needs to wrap around this box. So you have to have um a little bit of excess spacing there. So I guess when we look at the size paper that you need to wrap around these, maybe you should add even another like half inch, something like that, to account for this spacing. You could use like a piece of chipboard or something like that to space these out. Like just put a piece of, um, like insert a piece of board in there when you're gluing these together and butt them up like that, to make sure that they're all perfectly spaced and everything. I'm not going to do that, but that's one way that you could ensure that you get those evenly spaced um, and straight. So anyway, I'm just lining these up, giving myself at least that eighth of an inch. I'm going to flip it over and you can see the paper is already wrinkling a little bit. I'm gonna use, this is a bone folder that I love for this kind of stuff because it's great for squeezing out air bubbles. And now when this dries, these will all flatten out. Um, this one I did the same way. And when there was a natural little wrinkle in the paper right here. So this one does have a little wrinkle there, but it'll flatten out. But it's good to go around and try to smooth it out a little bit if you can. Okay. And take your bone folder and push your paper down into those gaps. Okay. And then we're going to go around and actually, I'm going to cut. We don't need that much paper on the borders. And I'm just going to cut the corners off. You want to leave about, I would say, at least a quarter of an inch from the corner there when you cut these off, because this is going to get folded over like that. And we want to make sure that the black chipboard's not sticking out. So I use the bone folder to kind of crease this up. Like so. Again, I'm using a glue stick. I'm going to push it down into those gaps in between. Use the edge of your bone folder or whatever it is that you're using, or your fingertip or whatever, piece of chipboard, credit card, whatever. And then I'm pressing down at the ends there to make sure that those corners are sealed up. And use my bone folder to sort of press the paper in at the ends that are in the gaps. Okay, wait, let me wipe a little bit of this excess off. Okay, so this is basically the base of our box. Let's see, is it gonna fit? Perfect. So you can see why you need that little gap in between those boards, because if you glued them, right up to each other, you wouldn't have it just wouldn't bend. So that's really important. Anyway, so there's that. Um, Now you can add like some kind of decorative paper on the inside, however you decide that you're gonna, put your box together, whether it's like that or this way. If you're gonna do it like this, then this part's gonna be covered, so you really don't need to worry about that. Um, so you could add something on the inside here. You could decorate the outside. Uh, I intend to do some stitching. I'm gonna add some something. to the outside of my boxes for the journals. And I'm planning to do some stitching with my sewing machine also. So I haven't attached the boxes to the covers yet. Um, but to do so, if you're doing it this way, then really what I would do is whatever you're going to cover this with, like I could just use the craft paper again or a piece of scrapbook paper, but you want to make sure that you glue it just slightly into this panel so that so that you sort of cover it up. You know what I mean? Um, at least that's what I would do. Like I would, well, I don't know what I'm going to use to cover this with, but um, like I would make it come down maybe a half an inch or something like that into that panel. And then when you glue it down, like I would just measure it, I would say exactly 6 inches, since this is about 6 1/4 wide. I would measure it exactly 6 inches, and that way you have just a little bit of a gap on each side to give you a nice little border. Um, Glue it down, and then you want to make sure that you use your bone folder to press that paper into these gaps. Just looks nice, and it ensures that it's going to fold up properly. And then you just want to use your glue, whatever kind of glue you're using, and glue the base onto the bottom. I would set it up like this, glue it down, make sure it's, snug, and then let it dry. I would wrap this up, wrap a rubber band around it, just to hold it in place. Let it dry, and there you go. You can add a magnet. You can add magnets. These little credit card magnets but you can buy these on Amazon. These work really well. They're really thin, and they come with they're self-adhesive. So, you could even just fill that whole panel with magnet, and then along the front of your box, put another strip of them, and then that'll hold your box closed. So these are nice to use, and they're not that expensive. Or you could, somehow integrate a piece of ribbon or um, some what's it called? Velcro, or a little snap, or you could use a couple of like a piece of ribbon and just attach it on the front here. Use like an eyelet or something like that. Use like a little eyelet, and then you can just wrap it around or whatever, like all kinds of different ways you could close this up. So anyway, I just want to show you guys how to make those little cigar boxes. They're kind of fun. I'm going to make a whole bunch more for the rest of my art supplies. And yeah, I love boxes. So, okay, so I hope that is comprehensive enough. If you guys have any other questions about it, leave them in the comments, or you can also send me an email. I'll put my email address in the description. So, and I will be working away on these little journals. In the meantime, I do plan to make a video to show you guys how to do this binding. It's like a 4-hole stitched binding with book cloth and all that, and show you how to put this into the cover without stitching through the spine, like a lot of us junk journal makers do. So anyway, which is part of the reason that I did the little watercolor on the spines of these. So anyway, okay guys, I love you and try to stay out of trouble while I'm not watching you. And don't forget, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not already. And thanks for watching. Okay, bye for now.